people from all over the world. I mean, it's almost like we're a tourist destination now, so which is nice. I mean, it's great. A lot of people come in. Some people buy stuff. Some people don't. You know, it doesn't really matter to us. I mean, it's just great that we have such a huge fan base.
Jarrod Schulz is done for. 5 years ago, he walked into an Orange County bar and spotted his ex-partner Brandi Passante laughing with friends. What happened next ended everything he'd spent 2 decades building. Jarrod's life is more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. So what really happened to Jarrod Schulz? How does someone turn his life around after serving 16 months in state prison, build a family and a television career, only to lose it all in one explosive moment? Join us as we unravel what really happened to Jarrod Schulz after Storage Wars. The early prison years. Millions of people watched him on the TV show Storage Wars as Young Gun. But years before that, Jarrod Schulz was just a young man in his early 20s making very bad choices that would eventually lead to his collapse. His world came crumbling on January 27, 1997, when the police arrested him. He wasn't just arrested, he was carrying a dangerous substance known as methamphetamine. As a matter of fact, it wasn't his first time being in trouble with illegal substances, but this time, matters had become more serious. At first, it seemed like everything would go in his favor as the court appeared to be going easy on him. During the judgment, the judge gave him what looked like a lucky second chance. The Storage Wars star was told he only had to spend 2 months in jail and then follow some strict rules on probation. After he pleaded guilty to the charge, he stayed in a local jail for 2 months and finally walked out as a free man, or so he thought. The freedom that seemed to have been given on a platter of gold lasted only about a week, and Jarrod was arrested again almost immediately. Like a moth attracted to flames this time, he was not only carrying illegal he was also driving under the influence. Even the quantity of he had was more than the first time. The same judge sat over his case and decided that Jarrod had wasted the second chance that was so generously given to him. The judge stated that he was now showing a dangerous pattern of behavior. Given that it had only been a week since his release and he committed again, the judge sent him to state prison for 16 months. State prison and local jail are 2 very different places, so the 16 months couldn't be compared to the initial 2 months. In state prison, Jarrod found himself surrounded not by people who had committed small crimes, but by very dangerous people, including murderers and others who had done terrible things and needed to be away for a long time. According to a source close to the family, living near these violent criminals was what finally woke Jarrod up. He then realized that if he didn't change his life, he would end up just like them. It can be said that being in prison gave him a clear view of his future, and he knew he had to stop, or at least find a way to. However, the mere fact that he decided to change didn't erase his criminal records, and those records would stay with him for the rest of his life. His time in the state facility also created a habit of handling stress in a rough way. Old habits die hard. That habit would later come back to cause problems many years later when he had gained fame. At 21, he walked out of detention having a felony conviction. No prospects, but a strong determination to never go back. But even though the scars remained, things began to change. What happened to Jarrod after prison? Brandi Passante, the second chance he needed. 1999 made it 2 years after his prison time. That year, Jarrod got a job in Tustin, working as a sales manager at a carpet cleaning company. Sure, it wasn't glamorous, but at least it was honest work. It was at this point that someone walked into his life. Brandi Passante came and everything changed. She was smart, capable, and above all, she didn't judge him for his past. But even more importantly was that she saw potential where others saw an ex-convict. Their relationship moved quickly, and by 2003, they had a son, Cameron. 2 years after that came their daughter, Peyton. Anyone familiar with Storage Wars would agree that for Jarrod, Brandi was the second chance he desperately needed. She was the lifeline that pulled him away from the path that had led to prison. But second chances don't come freely after all. He had to prove to her that her faith wasn't misplaced, that he could be the man she saw rather than the criminal the court system had labeled him. Jarrod handled the pressure quite well, and that drove him to remarkable success, while also creating an internal tension that would never be fully resolved. While still in his early 20s, Jarrod built a mortgage business during the housing boom. The money flowed for a while, moving him from entry-level jobs into something that felt like real success. It seemed as though the American dream was within his reach, but he couldn't be more wrong. The mid-2000s came, and with it, the housing market collapsed. Like many others, Jarrod's business didn't just crumble, it practically disappeared. Like a fall from grace to grass, Jarrod suddenly became unemployed with a family he couldn't support and bills he couldn't pay. The failure of his business went beyond the financial aspect. It struck at the core of his identity as a reformed man who'd built something legitimate. He'd proven he could succeed, that his prison record didn't define him. Then circumstances beyond his control took it all away in the blink of an eye. Jarrod had an aunt who worked at a storage facility. When she heard of his troubles, she suggested he try storage auctions. She thought he might turn a quick profit from it. Even though this was a far cry from the prestigious mortgage business he'd built, it was still something, and it was better than jail. It was that suggestion that eventually led to the creation of Storage Wars and transformed his life in ways none of them could have predicted. But how did storage auctions put him in the limelight? The arrival of the Young Guns. Jarrod and Brandi were given the name the Young Guns when Storage Wars first premiered in December 2010. The couple were merely underdogs whose pockets weren't as deep as those of their competitors. But what they lacked in finance, they made up for in their hustle and chemistry. Their viewers instantly connected with them because they felt real and relatable. Therefore, the show was a huge success. The first season premiere episode drew 2.1 million viewers, and the show was A&E's top-rated non-fiction show for 2010, with an average of 2.4 million viewers. The Season 2 premiere consisted of back-to-back new episodes of the show. The second show drew 5.1 million total viewers and was the highest rating for an episode of a series in A&E history. The duo became fan favorites. Their continuous bickering and clear partnership made them the show's emotional heart. For Jarrod, it was more a vindication. A convicted felon now starring on a hit television show watched by millions. That's truly a story worth telling. He was making $30,000 per episode and appearing at industry events. For him, there couldn't have been a better redemption story. They were so successful that in 2014, A&E gave them their own spin-off, Brandi and Jarrod, Married to the Job. The show's title was quite interesting. They were called Married, even though they never legally tied the knot. The success should have been everything Jarrod worked for. He had fame, money, a thriving business, a beautiful partner, and 2 healthy children. It looked like his life was completely transformed. Well, that's on paper. But success has a way of magnifying everything, including problems rather than solving them. The new life Jarrod got came with pressure. He needed to maintain it while filming a reality show. Needless to say, it was far from easy, and very soon it began taking its toll. He founded a business, Now and Then Secondhand Store, in Orange County. It was supposed to be Jarrod and Brandi's foundation, the business that would provide for their family long after the cameras stopped rolling. They had started it before Storage Wars found them, and the natural expectation was that the show's popularity should have boosted business. But it's easier said than done. Reality proved to be different from what was expected. In 2013, during Season 4, the couple opened a second location in Long Beach, and for a moment, it looked like they were expanding their empire. But the Long Beach location closed less than a year after opening. The Orange County location held on longer, but eventually closed in 2016. Both stores failed, despite massive free publicity from appearing on one of A&E's most popular shows. For Jarrod, watching both thrift stores fail must have felt like a repetition of the mortgage business collapse. Another of his legitimate enterprises ended just like that, despite his best efforts. He was making good money from the show, yes, but those paychecks were tied to network executives' whims. The thrift stores were supposed to be his independence, his legacy, something solid. Instead, they became another item on his list of failures. And beneath all of that, there was a question which was soon answered. If the businesses kept failing, how long before old temptations started looking appealing again? While Jarrod didn't expressly return to old habits, he demonstrated his frustration in a way that still brought the cops to his doorstep. But before then, what happened to his relationship with Brandi? The split that broke him. For almost 2 decades, Brandi Passante was the most important person in Jarrod's life for obvious reasons. She was the anchor that kept him from sinking back into old habits, and she was his partner in everything they did. She was also the mother of his children, and the main reason he stayed out of trouble and followed the right path. Even though she knew about his troubled past, she chose to take a chance on him and build a future by his side. But all that came crashing in a way no one expected. In April 2021, when Storage Wars returned for its 13th season, viewers immediately noticed something lit in place. Brandi and Jarrod barely interacted, they bidded separately, and the chemistry that was the heat of the show had completely vanished. In that season premiere, Brandi confirmed what fans suspected. She revealed that she was not with Jarrod anymore. Apparently, they had split in the fall 2018. But they recognized the importance of business, so for 2 years, they continued working together, maintaining a professional relationship despite their personal relationship ending. Describing herself as essentially a single mother, Brandi revealed that she had done most of the parenting even when they were still together. Jarrod lost Brandi, and so meant that he lost more than a romantic partner. He lost his business partner, his co-star, and most painfully, his daily presence with his children. Cameron and Peyton were 17 and 15 respectively when their parents split, so they were old enough to have opinions about what happened and who they wanted to spend time with. The split was not the end. Things became even more heated on the night of the 30th, when Brandi was spending time with her friends at a bar in Orange County, California. At this point, it had been almost 3 years since she and Jarrod had ended their long relationship. They were living separate lives, but that night, their paths crossed again, and it was far from peaceful. Unexpectedly or not, Jarrod walked into the same bar, and according to sources from the police, the two quickly started talking. But what began as a conversation soon turned into a loud and heated fight. As the situation escalated, Brandi told Jarrod that he needed to leave the bar, but Jarrod did not listen. Instead of walking out, people who were watching the fight said he stayed and began screaming at Brandi and the group of friends she was with. The situation became even more serious and physical. According to the official police report, Jarrod allegedly pushed Brandi 2 different times while continuing to shout at her. Someone called the police. By the time officers arrived, Jarrod had left. Days later, Jarrod spoke with investigators, but he denied ever laying his hands on Brandi. The Orange County District Attorney's Office didn't buy it, and in May of that same year, Jarrod was formally charged with 1 count of misdemeanor domestic violence battery. The charge wasn't just about one night. It was about a pattern of behavior, about a man who still hadn't learned to control his anger. For someone with Jarrod's history, the drugs, the DUI, the time in prison, This domestic violence charge looked like a return to old patterns he thought he'd left behind 2 decades ago. Months later, Brandi took to Instagram, and her posts spoke volumes. She posted a photo of a new tattoo, the word "free" with a bird flying away, which was clearly drawn. And she wrote about escaping a very difficult situation that many people fall victim to. Those words, "without fear," implied that the night at the bar wasn't an isolated incident, nor was it a first. It was rather the public manifestation of something Brandi had dealt with privately for a long time. Brandi wasn't ready to jump into a new romance right away, though. During a February 2021 interview, she said she wasn't really allowed to have an identity for many, many years. And so, over the last couple of years, she was kind of coming into her own and figuring out who she was. She explained that she just doesn't have an attachment to anyone. While she has dated, romance wasn't something she was really trying hard to seek out. She said she would wait until she could feel an attachment to someone. As for Jarrod, without Brandi, his life seemed to be cracking like a sandcastle in the wind. Now that Brandi left him, what happened to his career? The career that disappeared overnight. After the charges against Jarrod for domestic violence became public, A&E reportedly launched an investigation to determine his future on Storage Wars, the network that had built an empire partly on Jarrod, and Brandi's chemistry now faced a PR nightmare. Jarrod made a brief appearance on season 13, filmed before the April incident, but airing after the charges became public. The tension between him and Brandi was so palpable you could cut it with a knife. She once called him an idiot for spending $400 on a storage unit. When they both wanted the same locker, Brandi had her friend Mary bid for her instead of competing directly with Jarrod. It was obvious that they were just trying to conceal the hostility. That appearance turned out to be his last. Season 14 premiered without him. Season 15 also continued without him. But Brandi remained on the show even as Jarrod vanished. Even though the network never made an official statement, the message was clear. Jarrod was no longer needed. With that, Jarrod said his goodbyes to his lost television career. The loss meant more than losing income. The show had been his identity for more than a decade. He was the young gun, the scrappy underdog, the guy who turned his life around. Storage Wars was proof that he'd made it. Now that is gone. And what replaced it in the public consciousness was far worse than being forgotten. His last Instagram post was in 2021, right around the incident. After that, Jarrod essentially disappeared from public view. His television career finished, his reputation destroyed. Now, at 48, Jarrod owns and runs a bar in Lake Forest, California, called the Rush Bar and Grill. He took over ownership in 2019, back when his life still had some promise. The bar's website describes him as a family man and self-made entrepreneur, words that probably hold no weight now. In his personal life, he didn't let go of romance. He got a new girlfriend, Rochelle Beckman, who works as a bartender at his establishment, and they have confirmed their relationship. By all accounts, she's been supportive through his legal troubles. But starting a new relationship while facing domestic violence charges from the previous one creates complicated dynamics. The Rush Bar and Grill keeps Jarrod busy. According to customers, most people don't even realize he's the owner, which is probably how he prefers it. Being recognized now doesn't bring admiration. Rather, it brings judgment and conversations about what happened with Brandi. His children, Cameron and Peyton, are now in their early 20s. They grew up in a roller coaster of life, watching their parents fight on television, watching their family businesses crumble one by one, watching their parents' relationship dissolve, and then watching their father get charged with domestic violence against their mother. These questions would definitely haunt Jarrod because he knows the answers. He went to prison at 20, promising himself he'd never be that person again. He met Brandi and for 18 years maintained the image of the reformed criminal who made good. He had the television career, the family, the redemption arc that proved people could change. But on that April night in 2021, Jarrod revealed he hadn't actually changed as much as everyone thought. The kid who went to prison for drugs and DUI was still in there, still responding to conflict with aggression. 24 years after his release, Jarrod proved you can change your circumstances without changing yourself. Do you think anything could have saved Jarrod from this path? Would it have been better if he stayed with Brandi? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.